Hi, my name is Andree, and in this quick Border0 demo, we'll take a quick look at how easy it is to make a PostgreSQL server available through Border0. So what we see here is a simple Postgres server that I have running on a test server. You can see I can log into it on localhost. We do a list of all the databases. I can see I have a database called books. Let's take a look at all the tables, and we'll quickly do a select star from titles just to make sure we can see what's in there. And I can see indeed 21 titles. Alright, so now that's done, we can start installing first off the Border0 connector. It's very simple, just follow the instructions on docs.border0.com. It will show you how to download the Border0 binary, and once it's installed, you simply type in Border0 connector install, which will install the Border0 service as a systemd unit in this case. Now the first thing I'll need to do is authenticate. Obviously we need to know what account this connector should belong to. And after I did that, the connector is installed, it will register itself. And as you can see here, there's now a new connector called database server. And so now we're ready to use this new connector. The first thing that we'll do is we'll go to the sockets tab, and sockets are essentially resources or servers that you're going to make available through the Border0 connector. I'll select the Postgres type. I have my own Postgres server. We'll give it a name, and then we'll have to give it upstream information. Since the database server runs on the same host as the connector, we'll provide the upstream host name as localhost and the standard Postgres port. And here we'll provide the upstream information. For now, we'll provide static credentials. In a little bit, we'll see how we can replace that. We'll make sure it's connected to the correct connector, and as you can see here, now it tells us we need to apply a policy. It's very important to apply a policy because that defines who should have access to what under what conditions, and in this case I'm applying a read-only policy. So now I should be able to connect. Notice that I'm now connecting just with my single sign-on credentials, and I can query the same table that we saw earlier. So now I mentioned it's a read-only policy, so let's see what happens if we try to delete something, for example where ID is 1, and as you can see that will fail, and so that's our read-only policy at work. So next up, let's go back to the portal and attach a different policy, maybe a policy that gives me full database access. So I'll save that, and then if we go back and try and connect again, we are again able to query it, but let's try and do the same delete from. So let's do delete from titles where ID is 1. And in this case, you can see we are indeed able to successfully delete it, one row affected, and if I look again, I can see there's no ID 1. So in this case, this was a quick overview of how you can also use Border0 to control what level of database access someone should have. Alright, so next up, let's take a quick look at session logs. So I clicked on the initial session, so you can see the delete titles. You can see how it says command denied by policy. So this is our initial attempt with the read-only policy. And then the most recent session, which is still in progress, you can see that the delete from was indeed successful, one row affected, and you can also see the various other select queries. So this gives us full visibility into what single sign-on identity is accessing the database and what queries are being executed. Well, next up I want to talk a little bit about credentials. Earlier we provided the database credentials as static strings to the Border0 portal. In this example we'll take a look at how we can use environment variables. So this is the systemd unit file. You can see there's an environment variable or environment file that we can provide credentials in. And so these credentials are simply provided as key value pairs. So here we'll put in Postgres password is password, and Postgres username is Postgres. So whatever's in this file will be made available as environment variables to the connector process. So I'll save this. We now simply reload the systemd unit file and restart connector. And now these environment variables are available to the connector. So the secrets are all local. So finally, we update the configuration. And instead of the static strings, we provide pointers to the environment variable. So we're basically saying you can find the username in the environment variable called Postgres user, and similarly for the password. So we update that, and just to double check if it still works, we'll hit connect, and you can see we updated those environment variables. Let's see if we hit connect, and yeah, indeed I can still connect and query the database. So now we've made it significantly more secure and only store the credentials locally on the connector. Alright, so far we've been using mostly the Border0 web-based database client, but I also want to show you can use whatever preferred client you'd like. So I'm on my desktop here. I'll type in Border0 client login, which will allow me to log into my Border0 organization. So I'll click on this link and I'll use my single sign-on credentials to log in. I'll just say allow, and this will download some tokens and certificates, and from there on I have access. Next, I'll type in Border0 client DB, which will show me all the databases I have access to. So I'll select the Postgres demo. Notice how I can here select my preferred database client. In this case, I'll select it PSQL, and we can use the CLI going forward. So as you can see, I'm now connected. So we're going to connect to the books database. Let's see what tables exist here. So we'll see that. And then finally, let's do a quick query, select star from titles. Yeah, so you can see I'm now using my preferred CLI client. And so you can use your CLI client, you can use dbeaver, etc. So now go back to the title or to the portal. We can see all the sessions again. So if I can see the most recent session here, that would be my CLI client, and we can indeed see how we did show tables and then select star from titles. So lots of visibility and control, showing me exactly what single sign-on credentials executed what queries. Thank you for watching this demo. Just to summarize what we saw how easy it was to install the connector. We then made available a socket of type database or Postgres. We then accessed this Postgres database using our web-based database client. We saw how we had only read-only access and could only do selects. We then changed the policy to full access. We were able to delete things as well. We then looked at how we can use environment variables to define the upstream credentials instead of static strings, and the big advantage there is that the credentials all stay local to the connector, which runs in your environment, so that's a lot more secure. And finally, we looked at how we can use your preferred database client, so whether that's your CLI client like PSQL or maybe dbeaver or whatever other tools you prefer, or maybe the Border0 web client, all super easy. And so finally, we looked at all the session logs and we saw exactly who executed what query at what point in time, from where, and what single sign-on identity. Notice that as a client, we never had to really authenticate other than providing our user single sign-on credentials. So that makes it super easy for your end users, and for the administrators and security folks, you have lots of visibility and control. So hopefully this was useful. Give it a try. Should be super easy to get started. And if you have any questions, you know where to find us. Thank you.